Good morning, everybody. Before we start council, can I ask all members to remain standing for a minute's silence to pay tribute to Jo Cox MP, whose death shocked the world when she was shot and stabbed outside her constituency surgery in Battle in Spain. To those who lost their lives or were injured in the horrific incident that took place in Nice on the 14th of July. To those who have lost their lives due to the attempted coup in Turkey. And in remembrance of Srebrenica massacre in 1995. Can we all remain standing, please? Thank you, everybody. Can I ask, it's not time to sit down yet, I'm afraid. Can I ask you to remain standing for the Reverend Jeff Turner, who will say prayers this morning.
We pray for all the peoples of the world in these troubled and uncertain times. We pray for our own country, especially for the people of the city of Salford. We pray for each other and for ourselves. O Lord, our Heavenly Father, Almighty and everlasting God, who has safely brought us to the beginning of this day, defend us in the same with thy mighty power, and grant that this day we fall into no sin, neither run into any kind of danger, but that all our doings may be ordered by thy governance, to do always that is righteous in thy sight, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. We pray for all those in positions of power, authority, and responsibility. We pray especially for the elected members and officers of this City Council and for the work to be done today. Eternal God, fount and source of all authority and wisdom, hear our prayer for those who govern. Give to Elizabeth, our Queen, grace as the symbol of loyalty and unity for all our different peoples. Give to the parliaments in these islands, and especially to this City Council, wisdom and skill, imagination and energy, vision, understanding, and integrity, that all may live in peace and happiness, truth and prosperity, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. The grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, and the love of God, and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with us all evermore. Amen.
Councillors, it's very warm in here, so if the councillors would like to take their jackets off, please feel free to do that. I know some have already got them off, but for the ones who have come in their jackets, if you'd like to take them off, please do so. Right. Item 1. I've been given notified of an item under urgent business, the appointment of the independent person. I believe a copy of the report was actually circulated to everybody on Friday the 15th. We will consider this item following item number 7, which is membership of committee and panels. Item 2, can we have any apologies for today's council meeting?
Councillor Compton. Councillor Davis.
Councillor Warren, Stone, Cowan, Davis, Hamilton and Humphreys and
Could I give the apologies for the city mayor?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Is there any more, or is that it at the moment? Can we have declarations of interest? If anybody's got any personal or prejudicial or disclosable pecuniary interest, that you do so now declare. Any? No? Thank you. Item 4. This is the Long Service Medal, which we are going to today to present to Councillor Bernard Lee. Can I ask Bernard to come and join me? I think we're going to the table down here, Bernard. Thank you. Councillor Bernard Lee, on behalf of the City Council, I would like to present to you your 20 years long service medal. Bernard has served on this council since 1996. Firstly as a member of Swinton South and then moved to Pendlebury Ward. As a ward councillor, Bernard has campaigned tirelessly on a range of issues, including, I know, his love of Clifton Country Park. His work on the council has also covered planning and licensing. He also represented the city as the ceremonial mayor in 2012 till 2013, and I know he thoroughly enjoyed that year. For a long time, Bernard has also been an active member of the Citizens Advice Bureau. Bernard, you should be proud of the fantastic achievement. Being a councillor for 20 years is no mean achievement, and it gives me great pleasure on behalf of this council to present you with the medal. Well done.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair. 20 years seems like yesterday. When I first joined, it was to be a partner with Maureen, and at that time I think Salford had the highest percentage of husband and wives or members of the family, over about 20%, and it could have been difficult, but Maureen and I adopted a little formula which said that as my wife she was not a councillor, and as a councillor she was not my wife, and that gave us plenty of opportunity of taking opposite sides of the fence in debates. And sometimes there was a chuckle in the background from Councillor Hines whenever we differed on our opinion. I'd like to thank all the officers present and past for their unfailing courtesy and cooperation, and also to my colleagues present and past who I have enjoyed the company of. Thank you very much indeed.
Item 5, the minutes of the meeting held on the 18th of November and the 18th of May. Are these minutes correct? Any alterations? No? Thank you. Do we take matters? Yes. Yes, Councillor Balkan.
I'm referring to page 10, item 4. This was to do with anti-Semitism and anti-Islamophobia and various other things. During my comments to the Mayor at the time, I referred to what Boris Johnson referred to regarding Hitler. And Councillor Lindley at the time was seen to be laughing at the comments that I made.
Is this the point?
Not only do I...
Can I just say, I don't really think this is... I mean, I think you can raise it under, but I don't think it's... Is the minute wrong?
No, it's a matter of writing.
Sorry.
I listened to the tape for this because Councillor Balkin complained I
Right.
couldn't hear anything, any laughing. And
Right.
Councillor Merry laughed later in the meeting, and I wrote to Councillor Balkin and advised him of that. I'm happy to say that.
Would you like... Yeah. Councillor Balkan, can you just sit down a moment? I think our solicitor is going to say a few words on this matter.
Chair, yes, through you, Councillor Balkin did complain about his concern with regard to Councillor Lindley laughing inappropriately. I listened to the taped transcript of the council meeting. I couldn't hear any inappropriate laughter. I couldn't hear any laughter during the meeting until Councillor Merry, in fact, laughed later in response to a different matter, an unconnected matter. And I wrote to Councillor Balkin to advise him of that fact and to say that I wasn't therefore going to take any further action.
I referred to the fact that Councillor Morris came up to me after the meeting and said that she was actually going to stand up and complain at the time, and that she
Sorry.
Outside the room, not in the
Yeah.
council chamber.
Can I just say, Councillor Balkan, I don't wish to keep you shutting you up, but if you've got a serious complaint, which you obviously have, can you take it up after the meeting with the monitoring officers, and then it will be dealt with, and I'm sure Councillor Morris will actually come along with you on that matter, and I'm sure Councillor Turner will be involved as well. Thank you very much. Councillor Turner.
There are procedures for dealing with complaints, as you've rightly said. This is not the place or the time to do such, and I think your advice is very sound. Thank you.
And there's no necessity to actually be annoyed with us. No, you didn't. You put your glass down rather heavily. Well, he's not here to do that, is he? And there is other things. You could take this stuff outside. Right. Item 6, receipt of petitions. Sorry. Councillor McIntyre and Councillor Garrido and Councillor... Sorry.
Councillor Baines.
Thank you, Baines. Sorry. Yes. Oh, no, Councillor... Can we...
Councillor McIntyre.
Councillor McIntyre first, Councillor Garrido.
And access on areas. And it's asking the Mayor to use whatever power he has to ensure that our pavements are kept clear of obstruction to allow safe access for people in wheelchairs, people with sight problems and other disabilities, as well as parents and pushchairs. And so they've asked me to present this at Council today.
Thank you, Chair. Petition on behalf of the residents of Cavendish Road, Salford 7, against the proposal to convert a family dwelling at number 28 Cavendish Road into multiple occupation.
I have before me a petition with more than 200 signatures on with regards to the loss of toilet facilities in the Eccles Town Centre.
Although this is detriment to any ages, we're particularly concerned about the elderly and infirm. This is a potential equality issue for disabled people in particular, and people with functional incontinence, as well as being a public health issue. We would like the Council to review all eateries in the Eccles Town Centre for compliance of facilities, including health and hygiene.
Thank you. Item 7, membership of committees and panels. The Assistant Director for Legal and Governance is asked to present the revised membership of committees and panels for the municipal year.
Yes, Chair. This is a report that highlights some amendments to the membership of committees and panels and the appointments of chairs and deputy chairs. I don't propose to go through it name by name, but if there are any further changes, if they could be put forward now, we can note those in the minutes and they will take effect from today.
Right, Councillor Boschel would like to say a few words. Sorry, this is on committees.
Just in relation to the council. Just in relation to the council agenda setting group, there are 2 Labour vacancies, and I'd like to put forward myself, Councillor Boschel and Councillor Lancaster on that, please.
Okay. Thanks, Chair. If you could put Colette Weir onto licensing and Michelle Barnes needs to be taken off health and adult scrutiny, please.
Anybody else got any questions or comments on this? No? Thank you. Does the Council agree with these alterations? Thank you. Appointment of the Interim Deputy Monitoring Officer.
I think it's independent person.
Or is it this 7A? Yes, could we actually do the independent person? The monitoring officer is asked to present this appointment.
Chair, again through you, we had a vacancy for an independent person, a member of the Standards Committee, and Councillors Walsh, Ferguson and Turner sat to interview a number of applicants, and the recommendations of the report are before you, that a lady called Shazia Nazir is appointed to act as the independent person by the Council in accordance with the provisions of the Localism Act.
Has anybody got any questions or comments on that? No, right. Does the Council agree to approve? Actually speak to this.
Yes, Chair, this is the appointment of a Deputy Monitoring Officer. It has been done by Debbie Brown within the Council, but in line with the appointment of the legally qualified Monitoring Officer, it was felt more appropriate to have a legally qualified Deputy. We're asking for an appointment of an interim because our colleagues within the shared service are going through a period of change, and also we are looking at our arrangements with them from next year. So we're looking for an interim deputy, which will be carried out initially by the Head of Legal Services, Jackie Dennis.
Does anybody have any questions and comments on that? Again, does the Council agree with the name that's been moved? Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Right, item 9. This is the notice of motion on fixed odds betting terminal. The proposer of the motion, Councillor Warmisham, is asked to move this motion. I don't intend to read all this motion out. It seems to go on rather a lot, but knowing Councillor Waldersham, I think that's probably how it would be. So I think it might have been done a little bit shorter, but I understand that. And that I think that's being seconded by Councillor Clarkson. Councillor Warmisham.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Obviously it is a long motion because it's quite a serious and important subject and a lot of areas need covering. Members of the Council, I move this notice of motion today as the situation regarding fixed odd betting terminals is causing major concerns across the country and here in Salford. For those that don't know, fixed odds betting terminals are touchscreen roulette machines found in betting shops across the whole United Kingdom. Gamblers can play casino-style games with a maximum stake of £100, which can be wagered every 20 seconds. That is possible total of £300 a minute. There are more than 35,000 fixed odd betting terminals in the United Kingdom's bookmakers, and here in Salford we have nearly 200. Fixed odd betting terminals are disproportionately founded in poorer parts of the United Kingdom and generate some 1.7 billion of revenue for bookmakers. Campaigners have labelled the machines the crack cocaine of gambling, and that is what they are. The lack of regulation of fixed odd betting terminals has meant that they have clustered in areas of high social deprivation. Bookmakers prey on the young and vulnerable with aggressive advertising and betting offers. There is strong evidence that the high stakes on fixed odd betting terminals in the low supervision environment of a bookmaker have led to increased problem gambling. Recent Responsible Gambling Trust research on fixed odd betting terminals showed that 37% of players exhibited signs of problematic gambling. At stakes of more than 13.40 a spin, that rose to 80% of players exhibiting problem gambling behaviour. 1/3 of the problem gamblers, calling the National Problem Gambling Helpline, cited fixed odd betting terminals as their issue. We have also seen reported recently that fixed odd betting terminals are driving up violent incidents in bookmakers, with attacks on staff and other gamblers. Indeed, it is believed a murder and attempted murder were carried out due to the effect of losing heavily on terminals. They also have had a huge impact on terminal users' mental health, with a number of suicide attempts by those with a fixed odd betting terminal addiction. There is also growing concern about the terminals being used for money laundering by drug dealers, and there have also been cases of armed robbers using the died notes that they have stolen from their crimes being put into the fixed odd terminals. Sadly, all governments have turned a blind eye to fixed odds betting terminal addiction, as fixed odd betting terminals raise millions of pounds of tax. Also, bookmakers have a powerful lobby and powerful friends. They have kept arguing that more evidence is needed, despite the obvious case for regulation, in order to protect their huge profits made at the expense of those vulnerable gamblers. I am here, and I'm sure we all are, I'm now speaking with Councillor Clarkson, who's going to second this. We're here for those vulnerable people that are affected, especially those here in Salford. I do ask members to support this notice of motion and its recommendations. We need legislative change and for better protection from this crack cocaine of gambling. I do hope members will support this, as I think you've seen it rise and rise, and it is a real concern. Just one note, Chair, is that since the notice of motion was written, we have a new Culture Secretary, which is Karen Bradley. So could ask that to be changed in recommendation 1. Okay, thank you, members.
Thank you, Councillor Warmisham. Councillor Clarkson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's a privilege to rise to stand in seconding this motion. I think wherever possible we should try to work beyond the limits of party lines, and this is an issue of basic human decency. I would like to condemn in the strongest possible terms fixed odds betting terminals. Back in March this year, the Gambling Commission published a damning report detailing the exploitation of the most cynical and deliberate kind of the people most likely to be affected by fixed odds terminals. The Commission's report tells the story of Customer A, who maintained 5 jobs to feed his addiction to fixed odds terminals. By the time that the bookmakers had finished with him, Customer A had lost everything: his family, his home, and his 5 jobs. The system in place to protect customers was followed. Concerns about his compulsive gambling were passed up the line to senior managers at the betting shops. However, rather than express concern and suggest taking a break, one senior employee in a leaked email responded that steps should be taken to try and increase Customer A's visits and time spent in the gambling premises. With fixed odds terminals, the fixed margin is the key difference between betting and gaming. Unlike the Grand National or a bet on football, roulette and other games of chance ensure that the bookie simply cannot lose. What's more, terminals do not demand wages, holidays, sick leave, or even lunch breaks. All anyone needs to do is plug them in at opening time and empty them at night. Gamblers can sit down at a terminal unchecked, sometimes for hours. Money starts to flow in as soon as the machines are switched on, at a rate of around 2% turnover. Put aside for a moment the possible losses to an individual punter of about £100 a spin, 3 times a minute. 2% is the number that really matters, precisely because it is fixed. A huge annual income is guaranteed, and bookies don't need to lift a finger to get it. The system is quite literally fixed in favour of the house. It has been argued, and it is possible, by no means certain, that betting shop numbers would decline following any move to ban or restrict fixed odds terminals. Bookies say that the closures would be inevitable, but then they are addicted to the easy flow of money and will do or say anything to safeguard their supply, much as their customers will do anything to feed their habit. Indeed, Paddy Power, just one of the fixed odds operators, need only step outside their HQ in Dublin to see that this would not be the case. In the Republic of Ireland, fixed odds terminals have already been banned, and there has been no subsequent decline in people going to gaming shops. The backlash against fixed odds terminals extends across the political spectrum and continues to grow. It is quite simply a matter of basic human decency. We should not allow the most vulnerable to be preyed upon. As we take on more devolved powers from central government, we should use these to speak to the values and the character of the society in which we want to live. We have an ethical as well as legal responsibility to ensure that where we can, we tackle the naked exploitation of those susceptible to the disease of addiction. As Councillor Warmisham has correctly pointed out in his motion, we have an opportunity as part of the Greater Manchester Combined Authority to address the serious flaws in the government's laws on gaming, and a duty to highlight where the law is not working to protect those most vulnerable. For this reason, I give the motion my wholehearted support and would encourage all members to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clarkson. Now the debate is open to Council. Anybody wishing to speak, please put their hand up. Councillor Jones. Councillor. Right, Councillor Jones. Councillor Reynolds. Sorry, Councillor Reynolds.
Yeah, Chair, I am rising to support this motion, but I just wanted to say to John and Christopher that when I saw a Corbynite and
and a camera night joining together. I thought this must be a very serious issue. And to be honest, I wanted to move an amendment today if I could, because I went on the website and I looked at everything. I spent nearly an hour going through everything I possibly could. But to be honest, it's so complicated that I couldn't even think of a sensible amendment that I could put. And when I say complicated, what I mean is, this isn't just about gambling. It's about drugs. It's about alcohol. And if we're going to have, and it's about health issues, because if you talk to the people who've got these problems, lots of them have got depression for all sorts of reasons. Lots of them have alcohol-related issues and drug-related issues. So it's a big issue. So if the council's going to have a policy, clearly we need a policy on the whole range of things. The other thing is just to make you think, if you go back 20-odd years, 20, 25 years, every club you went in, Conservative club, Labour club, Catholic club, Social club, whatever club, when you said to the secretary who were the best members of the club, they always said, oh, those two machines over there, because without those, this club would cease to function. And that, I can't believe that just happened in Ormond and Carriford. That must have been so right across Salford. So the irony is, loads of us who were involved in clubs and running things like that many years ago, were reliant on the gamblers who were members of that club to actually keep them going, which tends to sort of, well, of course we're relying on the drinkers as well, dare I say. The more they drank, the more profit. So the trouble is we face different ways on some of these things. And the only other reservation I've got is because we're too late with this motion in one sense. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but the way people gamble now has changed massively over what they did 20 years ago. Because most serious gamblers, people who put lots of money over the tills, one, they phone bets in, and two, they do it all online now. And the trouble is the bookmakers and others have caught on to this. So every machine that John's been talking about, which exists in the bookie shops, they can get them online now and do exactly the same sort of thing. So I'm not saying this motion is a bad motion, and I'm not saying we shouldn't support it. What I am saying is, there's a lot more to this than what's down here, and it's something that's worthy of discussion, probably in another forum, I would think.
Councillor Jones, are you moving the amendment to this? Because you can, if you like. No, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to say that I'm in total agreement with this motion. I've seen it at first hand with some of my residents in Pendleton who have ended up addicted to these machines and have lost jobs and their home, and one gentleman in particular had learning difficulties and was, as I say, became addicted to these terminals, so I would fully support this motion. Thank you.
Anybody else wishing to speak? Councillor Garrido.
Thank you, Chair. It's not often, it has happened once or twice recently, that I agree with Councillor Jones. I know we're not in cohort, but there we go. I think clearly Councillor Jones raises a number of important issues. And first of all, I'll preface my remark by saying I support this motion. I don't think we have any choice but to support it as things stand at the moment, right? But I think one of the things that's actually missing is education. Right? And, we talk about, being able to go on the web and gamble freely, right? Just as bad, you can use your credit card. I don't think there's any limit on the amount that you can gamble on horses and so on, on the web. You can on the telephone, etc. You go to a booking office. So I think there's a big issue here, and I think the big issue is education, and it's actually getting to people. Yeah, okay, it's getting to... I said you cut me off, Chair. It's the power. it's really getting to people, first of all, at an early age, and I think we need to get into the schools and try and educate the youngsters about these methods of gambling. And I think we need to speak to the older population as well, because it is really so easy to run away with hundreds of thousands of pounds, sorry, maybe hundreds of thousands, but hundreds of pounds, in this way. So I really do think that education needs to be taken into account.
Thank you. I'm not guilty of cutting him off, by the way. But can I just say that, on that matter, I know Councillor Boschwell is there listening intently, and I'm sure, I can't see her. Councillor, no, it's Councillor. No, it's not Stone for Education, is it? Yes. Councillor Stone. Sorry, she's not here, sorry. We'll take this on board as well, and I'm sure that the executive will look at it. Councillor McIntyre.
Again, I think, like everybody else, I feel the need to support this motion. But I think the issue of the dependency and illness, although we need to recognise them very importantly, we mustn't forget that domestic violence is often a consequence, and the journey into debt, arrears and family breakdown are also subjects that we should be addressing in something like this motion. So yes, I would support it, but I'd like to look and ensure that there was recognition of domestic violence and family breakup as problems.
Thank you, Chair. I wasn't going to speak on this morning, but a number of points have been made. I think that we're in danger of widening it out into every evil that exists in society, and it's specifically about fixed odds betting machines and the type of things that they are. And let's just keep it at that at the moment, because it is a pernicious thing. Gambling is not illegal. I get annoyed when I watch a football match on television, apart from some of the scores, but actually every break, the number of sponsors and bookies and the rest of it. But we're not talking about that today. And I just want to make, it's not often I agree with Councillor Robin Garrido, and I'm not going to break the habit of a lifetime today. I understand what you're saying about education, but I think that what we've got to recognise, that gambling, particularly in relation to these things, is an addiction. And addictions, people do things that are illogical because that's the nature of addiction. And education by itself isn't going to solve somebody's addiction.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to agree with the motion as is. I'd also like to support Councillor Jones' call for a wider look at the issue, because my particular concern is we already start with our children. We already train them to be gamblers. You get your little iPad with your apps, and all these little children's games have got a spin the wheel for a prize and all that kind of. So we're already starting to train our children in the terms of gambling. So I would like to widen it at some point and support the motion, and ask all members do so too.
Anybody else wishing to speak? No, right. So can we now put the vote to the motion? Oh, sorry, Councillor Warmisham. I'm sorry.
Right, thank you. Can I thank colleagues that have spoken, and I agree this is just the tip of the iceberg. But I think when Councillor Clarkson and I discussed this, we knew that fixed odd betting terminals were a real problem. They are just so addictive. You just see people put thousands of pounds in, and there is a real risk of violence. You've seen bookmakers, members of staff in Salford attacked, verbally abused. They are a real problem. And I think what we decided that we want to start with this is because we need the regulation. And until that regulation comes in, things aren't going to change with fixed odd betting terminals. So that's why we focused on fixed odd betting terminals. I agree with everything else that everybody said, but I do want us to stick to these, particularly for a ward like ours where there are vulnerable people and deprivation in Langworthy. As Councillor Reynolds said, we see the real outcomes of what happens to people. So I thank people for supporting this and take on board what you've said. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Ormisham. So can we now move to the vote? Can I ask all those in favour, please show. Any against? No, the motion is carried. Thank you very much. Item 10 is the notice of motion on the corporate tax evasion and avoidance. The proposer of this motion is Councillor King, and the seconder is Councillor Brocklehurst. Councillor King.
Chair and fellow members of the Council, in moving this motion, I didn't want to read it out, but you can see it's all stated in the actual motion, is in the main specific in this occasion to corporate tax evasion and avoidance. But I do want to comment on the generality and the efficacy and value of taxes to society. I've stated in this chamber in the past, and I reaffirm my statement today, that fair taxes are a good thing. Now, very often in society there is an anti-tax drumbeat, and I think that that's unfair. In fact, I would go so far as to say that fair taxes, equitably imposed, fully collected, and the proceeds fairly distributed, are the cornerstone of the good society. So this motion, therefore, is true to my stance on the fairness issue. Way back when I was a young councillor, I suggested that we become an Equal Opportunities Council. Some 13 years ago in this chamber, I moved that we become a fair trade council, indeed a fair trade city, and that too was achieved. This motion, therefore, continues the theme of fairness, or justice might be another term. Now, famously, Benjamin Franklin said that there are two things in life that are inevitable. And what are they? Death and taxes. Well, whereas death, for all forms of life, as far as I'm aware, is inevitable, taxes, however, can be, and indeed are, avoided and evaded by tax planning, by income undeclared and underdeclared, and so on. But in the generality of modern life, however, most of us pay our taxes and our duties and our levies because they're almost inevitable, because they're often taxed at source. Now, none of us, of course, like taxes, and I'm no different. But philosophically, I see the absolute need for taxes, and especially fair taxes. Look around this chamber, or any chamber like it across the world. Virtually every one of us benefits from taxes or and the services that it helps to fund. Now, a new policy was announced in the March 13 budget on the use of the procurement process to promote tax compliance. And I agree with that policy, and actually it's a good policy. The new policy applies to all central government contracts, and it asks that suppliers bidding for those contracts should self-certify their tax compliance. And it applies to all the taxes that are administered by HMRC, but it also goes on to say that other contracting authorities, including local government, may choose to adopt these procurement processes. And that is what this motion is about, and that's what I'm suggesting here today. Now, the motion does mention the avoidance of corporate tax of the figure of 30 billion, which creates what's known as the tax gap. So what is the tax gap? Well, the tax gap is the difference between the amount of tax that should, in theory, be collected by HMRC against what is actually collected. The tax gap in 2013-14 is estimated to be £34 billion. Now, who says that? Is it the SWP or the Green Party or our friend Jeremy Corbyn? Well, no, actually, it's the HMRC, which is the body that we pay to collect our taxes. But there's more. The PCS union, which represents pretty much all of the employees at the HMRC, so they should know from the inside, they say in their report that the tax gap is actually closer to 120 billion. I think it's 119.4 billion is the figure that's suggested. So 30 billion, and can you imagine what we can do, what the public sector can do, if those huge resources were collected and then distributed fairly throughout the nation, what services could be provided and so on. And of course, By corporations avoiding tax, it gives them an unfair advantage in terms of the provision of services, of goods and services. And of course it almost certainly gives them an advantage when they're bidding for contracts, because they will be able to undercut the price. And indeed, if they're applying for contracts here for Salford City Council, it therefore also applies. This therefore is suggesting that we need a level playing field for all organisations. This motion also asks that the council becomes a fair trade, fair tax mark council. Several councils have already adopted this, and I had an email earlier this week about Birmingham City Council, which apparently has adopted this and was moved by a Conservative member. Several cooperatives, of course, are early adopters, as they often are, and there's a FTSE 100 company, the SSE, which is a FTSE 100 company, are now proud adopters of the fair tax mark. Now, several other councils, I would imagine, the Chamber would wish to comment on other forms of tax avoidance, but I'm specifically concentrating on corporate tax avoidance. By doing this, and by everybody paying their fair share, there will be greater burden sharing, and there will be more equitable contribution by the powerful and by the wealthiest, so providing the necessary resources to build a fairer and a good society. I move, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. So what does it mean in practical terms for us? Part of public and private sector tender process is what's known as a pre-qualification questionnaire, where we first check an organisation's financial viability, and these days we also look at other things such as quality management systems, health and safety management systems, and even communication systems, so that these organisations can demonstrate that they'll properly engage with partners, and also how well they communicate properly with clients. And if organisations don't meet these standards, with evidence, they've got to evidence these standards, then the tender goes no further. And what we're saying is that the fair tax criteria fits into this system. To make things easier as well for both public and private sector organisations, there are schemes such as SSIP, which is where organisations present all this evidence to one organisation so that they don't have to keep repeating the provision of this evidence for every single tender that they put in. And then again, the fair tax mark system fits well into this system as well. So what does this actually mean for us then? It means that if they fit the fair tax mark system, organisations, companies, businesses are demonstrating that they comply not just with fair tax for this country, but fair tax internationally, and they have an open and transparent system, that their presentation of accounts is open and transparent on their own websites, in their own communications and at Companies House, and that in turn demonstrates that they're showing and identifying who owns the company, where profits are made, and evidencing that they're paying the right amount of tax to the right company in the right place at the right time. Now, for us in the UK, that means they're evidencing that they're paying the right VAT, the right PAYE, and the right corporation tax, and also evidencing that they're properly contributing to the UK's welfare system and public service system, and our support systems, education system, and so on. But it also, in doing that part of the process, they're also demonstrating that they're a properly ethical organisation, because if they're being open about tax, they're also showing that they're not involved in money laundering, sanction busting, working with organised international crime, international terrorism, gun running, drugs running, and so on. So in short, I am supporting this motion, and I recommend the motion to Council. Please support. Thank you.
I now intend to open it for debate. So any member of the council who wishes to speak, please raise your hand. Councillor Turner, Councillor Garrido. Councillor Turner.
Thank you too, Councillor Thornton. I'm grateful to all the tax experts amongst us. My advice with all speech is that the shorter they are, the more better they're received. I did find that it dragged on a bit and I was beginning to lose the will. There are good points in this speech, in this motion. There are things that our group could agree with and would agree with, but there are also other things that we can't agree with. And I'm going to leave it at that because there's others that wish to speak and or elaborate on that, but basically we will not be supporting this motion. It's very complicated, as is tax anyway, and I am not really none the wiser for the explanations of the two members that propose and second it. And I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Councillor Garrido.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I think most of us would agree that we disagree with tax avoidance. I think it's not justified in any way, and any measures that can be taken by the government should be taken. And I think that's the issue, as far as I'm concerned. I think it is the government's job to deal with this matter. And they've already taken significant steps over the last Parliament, and I hope those will continue in the current Parliament. The concern I have over the motion is not the first part. I think the first part is more than acceptable, but as we get down to what you might call the detail in the next to the last paragraph, which starts off council believes that bills for council contracts, etc., etc. And what concerns me, Madam Chair, is that we stand the risk of affecting small companies and putting more and more restrictions and more things that they have to do in order to get contracts. Now, I'm not suggesting that they should break the law. I'm just suggesting that the more regulations that they have to deal with, the more difficult it is for small companies to actually apply for tenders. And we've always had a policy in this council, I believe, in trying to encourage local companies within Salford, and necessarily that might be smaller companies in a lot of cases. And I just think that by piling more and more regulations on them from the council, is probably counterproductive and could well end up even costing us jobs in the long run if those companies can't survive. So, that's my concern. That's why I can't support the motion in its entirety. And like Councillor Jones on the previous motion, I looked at this long and hard to see whether there was a possible amendment that would do the job. And I don't believe that this motion could be amended in a satisfactory manner. But I would say, in fact, is that I believe that we should, if we were to do anything, we should put our weight behind the government, and we should communicate with the government to say how we support any tax avoidance measures that they take. It's very important that we get hold of this problem. I appreciate that. Without tax, we don't get any services. We can't do anything, whether it's council tax, whether it's income tax, or corporation tax, or anything like that. We can't do anything. So it is important, but I don't believe this is the body here, this council, to actually make those rules and also put at risk maybe many small companies.
Thank you, Councillor Garrido. Councillor Sharp?
Thank you for letting me speak in the first speech. I've been elected by the members a little older, and the demographics for myself and for you, Sarah, in Worsley are quite different. And Boothstown, sorry, not Worsley. For my members, we are one of the highest hit for austerity. We have the highest income, one of the highest income deprivations in the country. So for us, we need any support we can get from the government, and the government's shown that it's not really willing to tackle tax avoidance. It's decimated the HMRC tax avoidance group, which has meant that less tax can be gained. And we have a real big budget deficit, and one of the things we need to do with a big budget deficit is increase taxes while at the same time maybe cutting services. And the government just seems to be cutting services all the time without raising any income. So for me, I support this motion, and I think it will make it fairer for small businesses, as the small businesses don't have as much power to avoid taxes. By having this motion, I think Salford's doing its bit, and Salford City Council are doing their bit to show support, and that we are looking after the people of Salford. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp, and it's good to hear you on your first council meeting. Councillor Merry.
Well, not for the first time, the opposition group across the way astonishes me, actually, particularly when they start to contradict their own government. Because apart from measuring the length of speeches, Councillor Turner, you might have wanted to listen to what the speech actually contained in terms of its content. Because what was actually said was that other people are encouraged to adopt these standards as a means of actually regulating their procurement. I assume when government said that they meant what they said. Unlike Councillor Garrido, appears to imply that this new government doesn't mean what it says and doesn't really want us to adopt these particular standards. Now, the issue for me is quite straightforward. It's not the small companies that we're talking about here in terms of tax regulation and so forth. It's asking them to self-certify, if you read the actual text of the motion. It is the large companies that don't comply with these regulations on the whole that seek to get away with it. And quite frankly, we think more work needs to be done on this. And it is extremely unfair, as Councillor Sharp has already pointed out, to small companies to actually have to compete with companies who basically are not prepared to pay their share of UK taxes. Now, it may have escaped the notice of the opposition, but we actually tender contracts worth millions of pounds to various bodies, right? And unfortunately, whether we like it or not, companies from outside of Salford and outside of this country are very interested in many cases in tendering for that work. If they do tender for that work, it seems to me, from my sense of British fair play, that they should actually be paying British taxes and be part of the British economy rather than seeking a free ride in terms of tendering for the work and making the profits overseas. Now, I think that's fair. Apparently, the Conservative Party thinks it's extremely unfair. I know which side the British public are on.
Thank you, Councillor May. Councillor Morkine.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've passed and I'm a member of the Association of Accountancy Technicians, and I work as a bookkeeper for two different companies within Salford. One of the things that we do is we have on a 4-yearly basis a VAT inspection. We've had pay-as-you-earn inspections, and we've had corporate tax inspections. And if I tell you the amount of corporation tax we pay is in the low tens of thousands rather than in the millions of pounds, this is where I totally differentiate that very rarely do small companies actually get caught out with avoiding or evading tax. What we do have is big corporations employing the major accountants within this country, and they are prepared to pay thousands of pounds in fees so that companies can actually go and negotiate with the Inland Revenue for basically paying less tax. In fact, if I remember rightly, last year or earlier this year, KPMG, which is one of the biggest firms of accountants in the world, entered into negotiations that they had a massive tax bill, and they managed to avoid or evade paying 80% of this because the Inland Revenue basically bowed down to representation that was made to them. We've had the Google situation where less tax has definitely been paid than what they are potentially going to pay in the rest of the world. We've had Starbucks, we've had all these other companies that have head offices in places like Ireland and Luxembourg, and their sole intention is to avoid paying tax in the UK. It's anticipated that if these companies paid their fair share of tax, what you would actually get is the opportunity for the Chancellor of the Exchequer to balance his budget. And we obviously know now that they keep pushing that out further and further because they receive millions of pounds, the Conservative Party receive millions of pounds of donations from these multi-million dollar companies, and they would rather make the donations to the Conservative Party rather than pay their Fed tax in the UK.
Thank you, Councillor Bolkine. Councillor Hines? Can't see.
Don't make it a long speech.
No, Les will tell me off, won't he? No, quite seriously, I'm glad we're having this discussion. I thank Councillor King for bringing it up, because let's face it, we live in a world that's desperate for investments, protecting public services, some greater than others. And tax has been an issue. I can remember a discussion some many years ago in my party, when I was supporting, obviously, public ownership to bring money in to provide services. And a member of my party says, I think we should drop that and let taxation fill the gap. Well, obviously, taxation over the last 30, 40 years has become a dirty word. Whether it's taxes pay you as you earn, or whether it's corporate taxes, or whatever it is, it's become a race to the bottom, where country competes with country to provide the lowest taxes to bring investment. That's real. Can't avoid that, I know. But somebody somewhere has got to make a stand against it. Now let's face it, tax avoidance is one of the biggest industries we've got in this country, and maybe the world. We talk about people like Bolkine just as mentioned, accountancy companies like KPMG and Deloitte and the rest of it. When governments are drawing up their tax policies, who do they get in to advise them how to draw up those tax policies? But companies like KPMG, Deloitte, and the rest of them. And then when these have been done, what do these companies do? They advise their clients how to break the very rules that they've advised governments to input. And therefore you're on a never-ending merry-go-round on how you get through to it. So it's an immoral position that they're in. There's no doubt about that in my mind. But all governments have become frightened to death of raising the tax issue to make sure that their peoples enjoy the fruits of tax revenues. And Councillor Garrido's right, he said it himself, that everybody should pay their fair taxes, and he says that the government are doing so. But nevertheless, I've always said, and I do not apologise for saying this, one of the big differences between the Labour Party and the left of centre parties and the Conservative parties, and one thing that almost all Conservatives can agree on, they may agree on different things like we do in ours, but one thing that they agree on is that taxes are too high
and spending money is badly spent. That's what brings them together. So at the end of the day, they will always argue, and they will come out when they know it stands out like a sore thumb, that the tax avoidance and the corruption within it, and people like Green, who's non-domestic, who's white in Monaco, who makes billions of pounds, passes it over through her name, and she doesn't pay a penny of tax. Totally immoral. Totally moral. Now, a Conservative government, because of all the pressures on them, and their natural inclination, will always seek to try and limit the position of taxation. Councillor Greendale brought up, and it's been adequately answered, I think, about how the small companies, actually small companies, as has been said, small companies are ruthlessly paying tax because the big companies are getting away with it. And therefore, it's a good debate. By the way, Jim, it's no answer. It's not going to answer all the problems we've got, by and large, because it's a world issue. But we can start in this country to make the moral argument that taxation is for the benefits of the people, however the taxation is, as long as it's progressive and fair, and those that have pay. That's what I would, and I'm supporting the motion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hines. Councillor Clarkson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can everybody hear me? I've got a bit of a droopage issue. Unfortunately, as with the last motion, this seems to have grown arms and legs, and we're now talking about a range of subjects out with the original matter of the motion. The reason that we are abstaining as a group is, as Councillor Turner said, as Councillor Garrido has said, is that we don't think it offers enough protection for the smaller businesses. The added regulation could deter them from bidding for contracts. We are genuinely concerned about that. We have tried to amend it, as Councillor Garrido has correctly said. In fact, quite a bit of work was done on trying to find a suitable compromise. We are not adverse to tax. We don't think tax is a four-letter word. We do believe in fair taxation. We believe in people doing their fair share. But believe me, Councillor, I'm a higher rate taxpayer. I absolutely hate taking the money out, but I know why it goes out of my paycheck. I think we need to focus on some of the realities as well. There is a problem with aggressive tax avoidance, but it is being tackled slowly, possibly, but the reality is in the financial year 5-6, the tax gap was at 8.5%. In the recent tax year, it was at 6.1%. Cumulatively, that's around 64 billion extra pounds into the economy. The argument that the race to the bottom has to stop, Councillor Hines, I think is one that has merit, and we do need to talk about the way that we approach tax, certainly in the current financial climate. But the problem with unilateralism is nobody wants to put their gun down first. We can't afford, certainly in our current situation, to be the first ones to put our guns down. We need to have a realistic approach to taxation. We need to be open for business. We need to have a robust, functioning economy. Idealism doesn't pay the bills. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clarkson. Councillor Bushell.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to reassure all members here that our procurement and social value procedures ensure that we work with local small Salford companies to ensure that they're on a level playing field. An example of this is our Employment Standards Charter. We've worked with all of the small businesses in Salford and encouraged them to sign up to that to enable them to access our procurement procedures. We have 80 small businesses signed up to that, so just to reassure members that we wouldn't consider anything that didn't allow our small businesses to access procurement.
Thank you, Councillor Bushell. Councillor King, you want to reply?
Thank you, Chair. Well, I think actually the speakers from my side of the chamber have pretty much responded sufficiently rather than me trying to repeat things, to be honest. And I'm a bit bit disappointed that Councillor Turner said that he was losing the will. I just wished he lost the will to say what he did say, and and things might be different. And Councillor Robin Garrido, I did mention that it's your government. I said I agree, it's a good policy, and I said that at the outset, and I support it. But the wisdom of your government actually put in place that other contracting authorities, and I read it, for example, local government and the wider public sector, may choose to apply these conditions. So your government actually thought ahead of where you are, I think, because they imagined that local authorities, including, as I said, Birmingham City Council, which a similar motion was moved by a Conservative member only yesterday or early this week, I understand. So I don't think there's any need for you as a Conservative group to even abstain, sadly, because other parts of your organisation are supporting this. So there's going to be a division, seems to me, between your organisation and different parts of the country. Now, don't mention about division in political parties. I think we know what's going on. And Councillor Sharp raised a very important issue about small companies. Actually, small companies generally do pay their taxes. They don't have the huge melee of major tax advisors and so on to avoid it. Nor sometimes would they earn enough profits in order to do so, quite frankly. So generally they, like us, like the ordinary citizen, pay their fair share of taxes. It is the larger companies generally that tend to avoid and they pay one country's taxes off against another and so on. And your government forethought this, I think, in this policy, and that's what this motion is doing. It's supporting, actually, a motion, the policies of your government, and I don't see why you should abstain on this. So please change your mind, be brave, and support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor King. Is everybody finished now? So we'll move to the motion. Can I ask all those in favour to please show? Can I ask if anybody is against that motion? And are there any abstentions? Thank you. It is very warm in here, so... oh, yes, I'm sorry, the motion has been carried. It is very warm in here, so I think we should at this stage have a break, and we shall be back at 11 o'clock. Thank you.
Say that, mate. Cheers, bud. That's the one that wants change.
Do you want me to stand in the right place?
Should be alright there now, I think. Just on screen.
So is that going to be okay?
Oh, sorry. Just stand in front of that.
So Councillor Merry will go here.
Councillor Mary's on that show there now.
Right.
Marshall uses the same mic. She'll be sat here. She uses...
We'll get to use that mic then.
This mic will bring into there.
Right,
Do you want that
move
back?
her down slightly.
Okay.
Right, she's got plenty of room here. She's only... Councillor Bottle's about the same height as me, I think.
Okay. So, if I just move...
So she uses this mic and speaks like this. That's clear enough, isn't it? And if she's looking outward, is that mic going to work there, or is it better here?
What's
better here?
Costs. In terms of personal debt, Salford is now ranked as the 38th most indebted local authority area, with younger people aged 24 to 34 being 4 times more likely to be in debt than over 65s. Last week, the City Mayor attended the launch of Salford Poverty Truth Commission. The Commission brings together people who have directly experienced poverty, with key decision makers from both public and private organisations. The aim is to give a voice to those who have experienced poverty firsthand, bringing their daily struggles to the attention of policymakers and city leaders to challenge stigma and stereotypes and work together to tackle poverty's root causes. The work of the Commission will feed into the developing partnership strategy to tackle poverty and reduce inequality in Salford. It's a fresh, innovative approach which puts those at the coalface at the heart of a strategy to change attitudes. It's this human-centred focus which has the potential to transform our culture towards those in need. And I'm now one of the Public Life Commissioners, and I've already sat down with Neil Cooper, the Director of Church Action on Poverty, to work towards a strategy to turn words into actions. It's not all sad news today, and it is especially nice to use this opportunity to congratulate our young people in care, who are performing fantastically in often difficult circumstances. Ofsted, in its annual report, commented on their impressive achievements, with nearly 8 in 10 of our care leavers going straight into employment, training or education. I'm delighted to also hear that some of our older young people in care have gone on to achieve degrees, masters and qualifications to join the barristers' bar. We're all very proud of their achievements and wish them well in their chosen careers. This shows that with the right support, young care leavers can make a difference, and I sincerely want to thank not only the young people themselves, but the residential staff as well as foster carers who provide the stability and support that every child needs in life. They are our unsung heroes. The development of GM Devolution Agreement also opens up new avenues of development. With the Cities and Local Government Act in place, the Greater Manchester Combined Authority have launched a consultation, inviting people to have a say in the way powers are distributed. The consultation started on the 6th of July and will run till the 15th of August. And our own influence within GM continues to grow. The City Mayor is now taking the lead for Greater Manchester on low carbon, environment and waste, a portfolio which will have a transformative effect on the development of a new city region. Back home, Salford continues to lead the way in innovative service provision, with the introduction of the pioneering integrated care organisation established in the beginning of July. The ICO sees the council work hand in hand with partners in the city to combine health and social care. This change saw the transfer of 450 adult social care staff from the council to Salford Royal Foundation Trust. I'd like to thank all the officers that have played a huge role and worked with us through some very difficult times to make this a reality. The aim of the ICO is to provide improved services to the public through the creation of a completely joined-up service in the face of reduced resources and increased demand. It will also act as a model for service provision in Greater Manchester. Moving forward, there are many challenges to face. However, with those challenges, there will come opportunities and we must be ready to seize them. Only by working together, all of us, with our partners and with residents, can we secure a better and fairer future for all. I said earlier that politics are changing. So are people's expectations of us. As politicians, it's our duty to listen to those who elect us. We haven't collectively always done that, and we need to remember we're here to serve. And to do that, we need to both listen and connect with our communities. The City Mayor is organising Meet the Mayor surgeries across the city, and we'll be publishing details of that shortly, and that is only the start. We need to follow the example of the Poverty Truth Commission, because by making those in need central to what we do, then we'll achieve real outcomes. If we develop strategies and plans in committees for and not with residents, we'll end up with strategies that don't work. There's no point having a strategy for healthy eating when someone's got no food in the cupboard. And there's no point having a strategy to support people with budget management when they have no money to budget with. When we talk of working with partners, that must include Salford residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Boschall. Can I now ask if there are any questions or comments for Councillor Boschall? No? Thank you, Councillor Boschall. That was very informative. You will see the next item is general questions and comments to Cabinet members. This is new on the agenda. So, sorry, did you want to say something, Councillor Marshall? Yes, I was actually going to say that. Thank you, Councillor Mashiter. So this is a new way of working, and what I was intending to do, so that it wasn't a free-for-all, I was going to go through the list as it's printed on the agenda. So can I start with Councillor Boschall? Any questions for Councillor Boschall? Yes, Councillor Turner. Sorry.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can I first start by congratulating the statutory Deputy Mayor, is it not? I'm getting a bit mixed up with all these mayors, on being appointed to the board of the AJ Bell Stadium. I think that was quite a wise move on behalf of the City Mayor. You will remember at our last meeting that we did receive a report on the stadium, quite comprehensive, and it told us all that was going on. Both myself and my deputy do appreciate the openness of our regular discussions on the stadium company. This does help us understand the situation far better, and it avoids any confusion. And for the avoidance of doubt, we continue to support the direction of travel and the business plan going forward. There is one question that I'm sure you may well have been asked before, but we had an update. The last update I had was in June. Can you tell us the position on the relief road, the Wiggers? As you know, there was a bit of an accident in the construction, and we were just wondering where we are on that, because of course it is so important to not only the stadium but to other parts. So I don't know if you have got an update, but last I heard the health and safety were investigating.
Thank you, Councillor Turner. My understanding of the situation is that the canal will be open quite shortly, so some work is taking place to enable that to happen now. We don't yet, unless Councillor Lancaster has any additional news, I don't yet have any further updates. Councillor Lancaster, would you want to comment on that?
Barge, a specific barge which can go actually under the bridge which is dropped at the moment and jack it up and actually move it to the shore. Once we get it to the shore, the bridge element of it, that will then be able to do the test and see what damage is done to it. But it's at the end of the month before this barge is arrived, and it's a one-off barge. So it's quite a large thing.
Thank you, Councillor Lancaster. Is there any more questions for Councillor Boschel? Right. Sorry. No, I'm sorry. You have to bear with me while I get used to everybody's name. It's Councillor Fletcher. Thank you.
Yeah, we've read in the newspapers that since the Brexit result, that hate crimes have gone up by 300%. Well, in our meeting yesterday regarding Swinton and Pendlebury, there was some good news that there was only, in fact, one hate crime in Swinton North, one in Pendlebury, and none whatsoever in Swinton South. So that's some encouraging news, and Salford bucking the trend from the rest of the country. Thank you.
Do you want to comment, Councillor?
Thank you very much for that observation, and I agree 3 across the city in a few weeks doesn't sound a lot, but we are getting anecdotal information as well. So again, reporting these crimes is really important, and to encourage everyone to encourage people to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions? Comments? No. The next one in line is Councillor Merry, who's the Deputy City Mayor. Is there any questions or comments for Councillor Merry? No. So it got off lightly this month, John. Thank you.
You can always ask me one if you want.
No, I can't. I'm non-political. Item 3 is Councillor Paul Longshaw. I'd like to welcome Councillor Longshaw. I think this is probably your first meeting, full council meeting, and you're the lead member for housing and neighbourhoods. Any questions for Councillor Longshaw? Are you all too hot to ask questions? Yeah. Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Lancaster is next, and he's the lead member for Environment and Community Safety. Any questions for Councillor Lancaster or comments? No? Thank you very much. Councillor Antrobus, lead member for Planning and Sustainable Development. I know Councillor Masheter's got a question. Councillor Masheter, and then Councillor Garrido.
Thank you, Councillor Marshall. Thank you, Chair. I do have a question for Councillor Antrobus. Councillor Antrobus, I welcome the amount of residential development on brownfield land, especially in our inner city. This is bringing not just my ward, but also neighbouring wards back to life, turning around decades of decline. Personally, I would much prefer to be dealing with the challenges that regeneration brings rather than to endure the blight of derelict, unused land and decaying buildings on our brownfield sites. However, I would like to understand, can just building high-density residential development on brownfield land in the inner city be sustained indefinitely to meet the current and future people's needs of our city? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Masheter. I do think you probably need to read it a little bit slower. So, it's just that it was, some of us actually would have missed it. So, in future, when you're going to ask the question, could you ask it, I'll comment, a lot slower, please. Thank you. No, you're fine, thank you. I think Councillor Antrobus is well aware of the question. I'm sure he's got the answer ready for you. It's definitely not off the cuff, is it? Right. Councillor Robin Garrido.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The first part of my comments is very much in line with Councillor Masseter, and I certainly wanted to congratulate the Council and our planners on being able to achieve such a good result. Certainly on this side of the chamber, we have been pressing for many, many years for brownfield sites to be used rather than any other type of sites, particularly, of course, greenbelt, greenfields, agricultural land, and so on. My only regret, of course, is that the 164 homes that the press release referred to as having been built on greenfield sites are, of course, in my own ward in Boothstown. And, of course, we are, 161 houses are in Boothstown, if that's the ones it refers to. I assume it is. And, of course, we're constantly under pressure. What I would say, in fact, is that I would ask our planners and Councillor Antrobus to keep up the good work in terms of brownfield sites, and not to actually be too defeatist in terms of how you may or may not interpret government policy certainly when you talk about the NPPF. Certainly my understanding, in fact, is that if there are good reasons not to build on greenfield sites, then that policy does not preclude the council refusing to build on greenfield sites. So I think we have to be very, very clear on that. Let's not use government policies as an excuse to build on greenfields. We have plenty of reasons why we shouldn't. So that's the first part. The second thing I'd just like to comment on, Chair, is the Greater Manchester Low Emission Strategy and Air Quality Action Plan, which has been produced by the Combined Authority. I'm quite sure the Councillor Antrobus is aware of that plan. It went before Transport for Greater Manchester last week. And the first thing I'd like to do is actually commend the plan to the Council, and I hope maybe it's a plan that could actually be distributed to all members of the Council, because there are really some extremely interesting parts in that plan. But I'd just like to draw attention, as I'm talking to Councillor Antrobus, about a particular section, which is section 6, and it's actions for managing new development. And it's very, very clear in this report that we have to be very, very careful when looking at new developments, applications for new development. We have to be very careful about the effects that it has on pollution. So I'm not going to go through detail and go through every single part of the report, but it does actually put more of a responsibility, I think, on local planning authorities to actually take much more care over pollution and the effect it will have, and particularly in areas, again, such as my own, Boothstown, and where I live in Worsley, where we're already over the European standards in parts of the area, that when new applications come in, we should actually take account now of what this action plan says, and actually be very, very careful as to what we actually approve when it has such a dramatic effect on the pollution. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is the first time we've done this, and I know that questions and comments actually are going to ride into one, but I know Councillor Boschel and everybody is going to be looking at this. So I know there's questions and comments being put forward by the same members. So I hope in future that will be different. And Councillor Antrobus, are you going to reply to these? Yes?
Per question, I hope. Thank you very much for those questions. I think in response to Councillor Garrido's issue around the air quality plan, I think that is an ambitious plan, but I would like to see it become more ambitious in the future. It is a plan which is the joint responsibility of a number of lead members, including Councillor Lancaster, who's probably the main lead on it from the environmental point of view. And I can assure Councillor Garrido that all our decisions on new development and planning will be in accordance with the relevant policies. the second issue around brownfield development, I'm glad that Councillor Garrido thinks that we should develop on brownfield land as a priority. That's always been the stance of this council, even when the current Conservative government removed the target, which was put in place by the previous Labour government to secure 85% of new development on brownfield sites. This government removed the target. They also removed the sequential test, which allowed planning authorities to refuse greenfield development if there was sufficient brownfield land available. So the two key drivers of policy have been removed by the Conservative government. I'm only sorry that some of our criticisms of Conservative planning policy have not been supported by the Conservatives in this council chamber. But irrespective of what government policy is, we continue to prioritise the development of brownfield sites because it is the right thing to do, and we continue to be successful in that in spite of government policy. We do it for the reasons that Councillor Mashita set out. We've had communities which have, where we've seen a falling population, and all the problems that arise from that of derelict sites, boarded up shops, and now those areas are enjoying a renaissance. Actually locating new development on brownfield sites means that most of them are in the core of the conurbation, in the wards of Ortal, Irwell, Riverside, Broughton, Wheatston, Seedley, Langworthy. These are the areas that are getting most of the development, but they're also the areas where getting into the Salford Quays and Manchester city centre, where most of the jobs are, it means that because people live close to those areas, they aren't making long commuter journeys, so it does contribute significantly to air quality issues. And of course, every home that is built on a brownfield site means that that is a home that is not being built on a greenfield site. So our policy is a policy that is helping to ease the pressure on greenfield sites. But that doesn't mean to say that we can never ever be in a position where we can say there will be no building on greenfield sites. If we are to make sure that we provide sustainable, good quality communities, then we must make sure that those developments that are taking place in the core of the city provide the amenities for local people. We can't go on building and building in the core of the city and end up creating the very reason why people left the city in the first place, by creating modern-day slums. We can't do that. So it's very important that we have the amenity space. We have new parks, such as one at Terracin Street, which was part of one of the new parks, part of the development in the area. The investment that's going into Peel Park, the new second basin, which will be a public wetlands area. We've got to make sure that we provide all these spaces. But if you provide those spaces, that means that you're not building there. And you should provide them, because there is an incredible inequality in this city in terms of access to open space. And when I looked at the residential completions report, which okay, because I wanted to address the point that Councillor Greedo raised, in particular about Boothstown being under constant pressure. It's forecast that over the next 5 years, the Worsley and Boothstown neighbourhood will have a population increase of 2%. The population of Aldsall and Langworthy under the same period will increase by 30%. Who's under pressure? The population density of Boothstown is 11 persons per hectare. Under Aldsall, it's increased from 34.3 persons per hectare to 38.8 persons per hectare over the past 3 years. Who's under pressure? In Boothstown, Worsley and Boothstown, they have access to 20.3% of all the open space in the city. 10.9% of all the accessible open space in the city. Who's under pressure? Because in Aldsall and Langworthy, the comparative figures are 3.2% and 2.7%. Now, I'm not saying that somehow there should be equal proportions in each area, but when we see the stark inequalities there in terms of the population density and open space, I think it's right that we, as a city council, should make sure that we have a fair allocation of housing throughout the city. Every ward should be able to take its fair share, and we shouldn't listen to NIMBYs in some areas saying we won't take more housing, because the consequence of that is to put more stress and more pressure on those urban cores that actually are doing more than their bit for housing the future population of this city.
Councillor Antrobus, you've got leeway this time, but I do think that in future, can we just try and keep everybody to 5 minutes? I know it's not written in the Constitution. I know that this is the first time we've done it, but because people take leeways, it will become stricter than not. So can I just say thank you very much for that, and I'm sure the information was very useful. And can we now move on to Councillor Hines, Finance and Support Services. Are there any questions of Councillor Hines? No? Thank you very much. In the absence of Councillor Lisa Stone for Children and Young People, I believe Councillor Walsh, you will be answering any questions, if there is any questions. Are there any questions on the children and young people? Thank you. Councillor Collinson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. All children and young people have the right to be protected from harm and to have the opportunity to achieve their full potential. On a recent safeguarding refresher training course that I took part in, we had a brief discussion about the formation of a GM Children's Safeguarding Board. And what I wanted to ask the lead member was if there would therefore be a standardised threshold of need, which is advice and guidance associated with levels of intervention for safeguarding and promoting the welfare of children, or would each authority retain its own special threshold, bearing in mind, for example, that Salford has a high threshold and Trafford has a very low threshold? Thank you.
Within my portfolio, actually.
Just a moment, Councillor Merry. Councillor Merry will now answer this question.
Right. I'll just point out it's within my portfolio in terms of external relationships and the Greater Manchester situation. And I want to tell Councillor Collinson, yes, there are talks going on between the Greater Manchester authorities and the Department for Education. However, it is very much about the Greater Manchester role being one of supervision, of making sure that everybody's up to the right standards and being prepared to offer support
support when things go wrong. And as far as I'm concerned, that's where we're up to in terms of this stage. Each authority in Greater Manchester is at a different stage of development, and clearly there are some which are struggling, and if we could help and support, we would want to help and support across the Greater Manchester family. And I think it would be better if help and support was on a local level rather than simply relying on Ofsted or the department nationally.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Any more questions, or are we... no, thank you. Councillor Tracy Kelly, Lead Member for Adults and Services, Health and Wellbeing. Is there any questions for Councillor Kelly? Councillor Turner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Firstly, I'd like to thank you for the briefing that you organised yesterday evening. It was very helpful in making our decision. The other thing is we've heard a lot from planning and various things, and of course the city is growing and growing fast, and with that it brings challenges. Now, I'm talking obviously addressing the health part of the challenge, but it was drawn to my attention by my colleague Councillor Morris that there is a problem. We are short of GPs in Salford, and it quite frightened me, but I did back it up, because when I went to my doctors, they're reducing the catchment area for the surgery, which alarmed me somewhat. So with our success is coming the challenges, and I do understand that we've got the problem with access to GPs as well. Some people are waiting quite a time for an appointment, and it's not satisfactory. Can you use your good offices? I'm sure you are aware of it, actually, because I drew the City Mayor's attention to it, and he rightly gave it the priority that it required. But could you use your good offices to report at some stage on how we're doing with it? Because I understand from, I think it was Councillor Morris, who quite rightly pointed it out in planning, because planning is involved. When we're planning and giving out all these planning permissions, I mean, we're not saying they're all going to be built, that's not within our control, but we do have to look at health, education, etc., etc. Otherwise, we're going to be in a bit of a pickle. So if you could, report at some stage on how we're going to do with it, because I think it was over 20-odd short, was it not, Councillor Moore? Was it about 20 short? Oh, anyway. Anyway, I just thought I'd highlight it to members, because it does concern us all. Especially the aged one.
Okay. Thanks for that, Councillor Turner. Yes, I am aware of it, and as the City Mayor. There is a piece of work being done by Councillor Warmsham, and it is the correct number, 20, that we are short across the district. We are involved with the CCG, and it is a cross-cutting issue that we are going to be looking at with other directorates, because obviously it does involve planning, and we can't just make a GP decide to set up a practice in a certain area, but we are well aware of that, and I take your comments on board. And I would also just like to thank all those members that did attend on Monday evening for the briefing session, and hopefully there will be more of those, especially from the health side of things, from my point of view, in making the decisions that have to be made with the cuts that we're going to have to take. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. Councillor Ferguson, Lead Member for Workforce and Industrial Relations. Any questions or comments, please? No? Thank you very much. Thank you. Can we now move on to item 14, which is the general questions or comments on the discharge of functions for the Joint Authority and outside bodies. Do members have any questions or comments? No? Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Lindley. Sorry, Councillor Lindley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just very quickly on the Working Class Movement Library report, it was interesting to read that they actually had a budget surplus this year, and they do point out the difficult financial circumstances that this council finds itself in. I wondered, given that they are running a surplus, whether we had considered asking them for some of that grant back. Thank you.
I think it's Councillor Ferguson that will be replying to this one.
I didn't realise that we were up to this item on the agenda yet. You have jumped. But don't worry. I'll answer the question. You have got the annual report of the Working Class Movement Library attached to the minutes, and I would remind people that you've all had an invite on the 2nd of September to go down and visit the Working Class Movement Library. I think if you read that report, you'll see the activities that are taking place there, and you've got the opportunity to discuss with them on that visit, if you can make it, what they're doing, and also discuss the finances. I can assure you that they are not funded with money, and they are looking for more, and they have ambitious expansion plans, but they do appreciate the support that is given by this council.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. Is there any more questions or comments on the items that you've had sent out to you? If not, then I think I need to now. That concludes the meeting of this council, and I may now declare the meeting closed. Thank you.